Well, good morning. Happy Monday. It is Monday, May 4th, 2026, and a beautiful day outside. It's actually quite overcast. It's been overcast for 2 days, and we might get some rain. I don't know. Somebody said, one of the channels, that we're going to have a big El Nino this year, and I have no idea what that means. So I looked it up, and apparently it means that we might have a colder winter. Surprise, surprise, and more rain. So if the El Nino pans out like it's supposed to, we'll have more rain and we'll have more cold weather, which is interesting because we had hardly any cold weather this summer, or this winter. It's May, and I don't even feel like we had a day that had a freezing. It was pretty wild. Gee, did you have a good weekend? We had a good weekend. On Saturday night, we went to see a movie. What was the name of the movie? I can't remember the name of the movie. It was, there's a guy who lives here locally in Tucson, and he filmed a movie, and part of it was filmed at the Mescal movie studio, and we love the Mescal movie studio. We have been on tours there and watched a lot of movies. You know, a lot of people watch movies to see the actors. Jennifer and I watched the movies to see the Mescal movie studio. So anyway, most of the movie took place outside, out in the not in the forest, but in the wilderness. And so we only saw a few bits and pieces of the Mescal movie studio. But it was an interesting movie. The photography was incredible. The amazing, what probably would cost $100,000 20 years ago for a camera, you can buy today for fraction of the cost. And the quality is just absolutely incredible. So there was some really good photography there. And it was an interesting story. And I think it's a story of redemption. I like stories of redemption. So anyway, it was kind of I don't know if it was a preview. It was a limited engagement. I don't know what you would call it. Anyway, but we were invited, so we went to see it. And I think maybe we'll see where that goes. And other than that, it was just a pretty nice weekend. I enjoyed it very much. As far as birthdays go, yeah, my wife doesn't remember the name of the movie. Yeah, I don't remember. Somewhere we'll figure it out. All right. Birthdays. All right. We have 2 birthdays today, Linda Getz and Preston Wilson. So may you both have blessed birthdays today. I will close that out. Let's get into our study. We are in Deuteronomy chapter 32. This is called the Song of Moses. And we are getting to the end of Moses' life. At the end of Deuteronomy, Moses passes away. And so we have maybe 3, 4, 5 more chapters. I can't remember. I think it was 37 or 38 chapters in Deuteronomy. So we are getting to the end. This is his swan song to Israel. And he talked a little bit about the history. And then last episode we got into it. But basically, this is Israel has been challenged to follow God, and they won't. And Moses knows this, and God knows this. If you remember back in verse 18, this is the charge against Moses, or against Israel. You deserted the rock who fathered you. You forgot the God who gave you birth. That's basically where they went wrong. God provided for them, brought them out of slavery of Egypt, bringing them into the promised land, giving them victory over all the enemies. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. He will be their God. They will be their people. All they have to do is read the Torah. And when they read the Torah, it connects with the natural law in their heart, and they realize this is how they need to live for God. And that's all they have to do is follow God as a community, and they don't do it. They desert the rock who fathered them. They forgot the God who gave them birth. So that's the charge against them. And basically, then God is giving them the punishment. And that begins in verse 19. And he was angry with them. He hides their face. He's angered because they follow worthless gods. There's going to be a fire that's kindled against them. And now we'll pick up where we left off last time, which is in verse 23. I will heap calamities on them and spend my arrows against them. I will send wasting famine against them, consuming pestilence and deadly plague. I will send against them the fangs of the wild beast, the venom of vipers that glide in the dust. Send against them the fangs of the vipers that glide in the dust. Isn't that what the truth? These are the things that God will do. He's going to heap calamities. He's going to send wasting famine, send them fangs of wild beasts, fangs of venom from the vipers. I don't know if this could be more figurative than literal. Of course, we don't. It's tough to know because it doesn't say. But secondly, I don't know if in Israel's time, were there lots and lots of snakes that killed people, and were there lots and lots of wild animals that came and chomped up people? Is that something that they had to live with in constant fear, or was that something that even at Israel's time, it was very, very rare? Because if it's very, very, very rare, then this is more figurative language. But if this is something that was, a calamity that they had to protect themselves against all the time, then this is probably kind of a thing that God will do to them, bring against them the animals that can destroy them. Verse 25, in the street the sword will make them childless, in their homes terror will reign. The young men and the young women will perish, the infants and those with gray hair. I said I would scatter them and erase their name from human memory, but I dreaded the taunt of the enemy, lest the adversary misunderstand and say, our hand has triumphed, the Lord has not done all this. So there'll be wars, the sword will make them childless, their homes will reign with terror. I mean, these are not pleasant things. The home is supposed to be a place of security and not a place of terror. Young men and young women will perish, the infants and those with gray hair, everybody will perish. He will scatter them. He will erase their name from human memory. But he doesn't want to do that necessarily, because if it's God's punishment and God's wrath, and the enemy happens to stumble upon them, the enemy can say, well, we did this. And God won't get the credit for punishing his own children, if that makes sense. This is a wrath that will come upon God, only if they don't follow God's law. Just read God's law and follow it. Make that the law of the land for Israel, and God will bless you. And if you don't, there will be calamities. Let's see. Hold on just a second. Verse 28. They are a nation without sense. There is no discernment in them. If only they were wise and would understand this and discern what their end will be. How could one man chase 1,000 or two put 10,000 to flight, unless their rock had sold them, unless their Lord had given them up? For their rock is not like our rock, as even our enemies concede. Their vine comes from the vine of Sodom and from the fields of Gomorrah. Their grapes are filled with poison, and their cluster with bitterness. Their wine is the venom of serpents. the deadly poison of the cobras. There's no discernment. And discernment takes two aspects to it. One, you've got to know God's law, but then you have to follow it. And if you haven't been instructed in God's law, how do you have any discernment whatsoever? How are you wise in the things of God if you haven't been told the things of God? This is why Jesus said, make disciples by teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. How can you be a disciple of Jesus unless you've heard the teachings of Jesus? And the funny thing is in our world today, a lot of people think they know what the teachings of Jesus are. But they're completely 100% wrong. Jesus teaches more about grace and love than anything else. And he shows a path that's a path of righteousness that's more in line with good and loving your fellow neighbor than it is chastising your fellow neighbor because he doesn't follow God's law. And yet that's the narrative that's put out there. The rock is not like our rock, as even the enemies concede. Their vine comes from the vine of Sodom and their fields from Gomorrah. Of course, we all remember Sodom and Gomorrah, the punishment that happened there. Their grapes are filled with poison, their clusters with bitterness. Yeah. All right. But is that the end? No. Let's continue reading. That's the punishment. Now let's get to verse 34. Have I not kept this in reserve and sealed it in my vaults? It is mine to avenge, I will repay. In due time their foot will slip, their day of disaster is near, and their doom rushes upon them. This is the enemy. God will not let Israel perish. He will watch over them. He will avenge the enemy. Their foot will slip, their day of disaster will come, and doom will rush upon them. The Lord will vindicate his people and relent concerning his servants. When he sees their strength is gone and no one is left, slave or free, he will say, now where are their gods? The rock they took refuge in, the God who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offering. Let them rise up to help you. Let them give you shelter. Yeah, so the foreign gods, they will cry out to their foreign gods, and the foreign gods, of course, aren't going to help whatsoever. Even when they cry out, they won't help, because there's only one true God who helps his people, and that's the God of Israel. See now that I myself am he. There is no God beside me. I will put to death, and I will bring to life. I have wounded, and I will heal, and no one can deliver out of my hand. I lift my hand to heaven and solemnly swear, as surely as I live forever, when I sharpen my flashing sword and my hand grasps it in judgment, I will take vengeance on my adversaries and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, while my sword devours flesh, the blood of the slain and the captives of the heads of the enemy leaders. So God will step in, and like a battle, he will crush the enemy. And this is a promise that he has. Verse 43, rejoice, you nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants. He will take vengeance on his enemies and make atonement for his land and people. So this is the judgment of God and the punishment of God to the enemies and the rescue of God from the enemies. And one of the things that Scripture clearly teaches is that Jesus is the fulfillment of the Old Testament. So this vengeance that God brings to Israel, I mean, we'll see this pattern over and over again. Israel doesn't follow God. They fall into trouble. They cry out to God for help, and God comes back and rescues them from their enemies. And life is good, and then it falls apart. It seems like there's this whole cycle that it almost almost like that saying, good times produce weak men produce bad times produce strong men produce good times, and then it all starts over again. This is the cycle. And God will come and rescue Israel when they need rescuing. But then after they're rescued, they will live high on the fat of the cow and never think more about God until they're in trouble again. And the cycle repeats and repeats over and over again. And this cycle has to be broken at some point. And so what God does is he goes silent for a period, and then he brings forth his son Jesus, who's the ultimate fulfillment of the Old Testament, and shows people how to live, shows Israel how to live for God, and redeems them, rescues them permanently. And we live in that permanent rescue. But we still fall into the same patterns ourselves. We forget God in good times, and we cry out to God in bad times. And then we get stronger with God. Our relationship grows stronger in the bad times. And then when that happens, we end up with good times. And then when good times happen, sometimes we forget about God. What does forgetting about God look like? It's basically forgetting about him, forgetting about his blessings and his love and his grace in your life, not rejoicing and being thankful for the things he's provided, but instead forgetting about him. And we all go through these cycles. We go through these cycles where we're deeply, deeply connected with God. And then when we're deeply connected with God, perhaps we think, well, this is going so well, I don't need to spend more time with God. And then it falls apart, and then we spend more time with God, and the cycle goes over and over again. Maybe we become weak people or strong people in our own cycle. Verse 44. Moses came with Joshua, son of Nun, and spoke all the words of this song in the hearing of the people. When Moses finished reciting all these words to all of Israel, he said to them, "Take to heart all the words I have solemnly declared to you this day, so that you may command your children to obey carefully all the words of this law. They are not just idle words for you, they are your life. By them you will live long in the land you are crossing Jordan to possess." So he's giving them the way of life. And they can't follow the way of life. So God sends Jesus to be the way of life, to teach the way of life. There's a lot of parallelism about Jesus, predicting Jesus, tie-ins with Jesus, the promise of an atonement. Jesus was considered the rock. The Messiah is the rock. Salvation to all the nations. A theme of vengeance and redemption. These are all kind of foretastes of Jesus that is to come. All right. Verse 48. On that same day, the Lord told Moses, "Go up into the Abarim range to Mount Nebo of Moab, across from Jericho, and view Canaan, the land I am giving the Israelites as their own possession. And there on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the desert of Zin, and because you did not uphold my holiness among the Israelites. Therefore you will see the land only from a distance. You will not enter the land I'm giving to the people of Israel." And is this a curse? Or is it a promise? Is it hope? I mean, but basically what God is saying is that I want you to go up to the mountain, Mount Nebo in Moab, if you remember, is on the west side of the Jordan River, and look out over the promised land. And you're not going to enter it, but your people will take it, and this will be their land. And in a way, it's sadness, because it would be great if Moses could tiptoe into the promised land and say, "I made it," and then die. But either way, he's not going to see. He's too old to lead Israel once they go into the promised land. They need a fighter who's older, has more power. This is going to be Joshua. Joshua will lead the battles in the promised land. Joshua's younger. He's he's old enough to have wisdom, but he still has enough energy to lead them into battle. There is a lot of things that an old person can do, like Moses. He's got wisdom. He can speak. He has power. There's just a sense, an aura about him. He doesn't have to lift a finger, and he can get people to do things that need to be done because of his leading people through the promised land or through the wilderness and bringing them into the promised land. I mean, they could carry him around in a stretcher, and he would be able to lead. But leading in battle is a different charge, and it does take a bit of youth. And it takes someone like Joshua, who we'll find out, is willing to go into battle and to engage the enemy, which he does. And if you'll remember, at Meribah, they didn't trust God, and so God says, "You will not enter into the promised land." So this is a fulfillment of God's speaking to Moses that he will not enter. The only ones that enter are Joshua and Caleb of the old folk. But the whole tribe goes, the descendants of the people that were in slavery of Egypt, they go into the promised land and they become the people of God in the promised land. They just do it without Moses. And we'll probably get into this at the death of Moses, but just think about how Moses, his story, from a baby infant who was rescued. His mother didn't want him to die by the hands of the Egyptians. She puts him in a basket. He ends up in Pharaoh's court. He ends up leaving Pharaoh's court. He finds out that his true identity is that of an Israelite. He goes out into the wilderness. He meets Jethro. He meets God. He comes back and confronts Pharaoh. All that stuff could only be done by Moses. The only one that God could have used, God could have probably used anybody, but God created Moses for a purpose, and that was to lead the people out of slavery, to be the lightning point of God's power to lead them out of slavery. And then he leads them in the promised land to the doorstep or he leads them to the wilderness, to the doorstep of the promised land. And when we get to the end of the life of Moses, it will be sad because his story, which begins in early Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, this is really the story of kind of Moses and God. And a new chapter will begin. And we will be sorry to see Moses leave, but we know that he will be with God forever and with his ancestors forever. All right. I think we'll leave it there. Let me see. Let me go to the next chapter here and just look here. Verse 33, or chapter 33. Yeah, Moses continues speaking, but it's a different thing. All right. Yes, let's close in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for watching over us this weekend. Thank you for Moses and his life. Continue to watch over us until we meet again. In Jesus' name, amen. Yes, Truth Be Told was the name of the movie, Truth Be Told. And it was a story of redemption. It was a story of one person standing up for the truth so that the truth is told. And because of that, there is some redemption. And it was a short film. I think it was 20 or 24 minutes long. It's the amount of footage you have to film to get like a 90-minute movie is incredible. And so anyway, we may show it at some point. That was kind of part of my invitation was, is this something you want to show? And haven't come to that conclusion yet. All right. I think that's it. Hope you have a great day. May God richly bless you. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.